yeah, I watched him fight. He was just a well-rounded fighter, and so I started gravitating towards these guys who were well-rounded. They were wrestling, they were, they had submission, but they were also really effective and proficient kickboxers.
Okay. That makes sense because you yourself are extremely well-rounded. I mean, jiu-jitsu, striking, wrestling, just everything, putting it all together. And it shows in your career for sure. Now, speaking of that, the natural born killer, where the hell did that come from? How did you get that nickname?
I come from that original gym that I trained at. Like I was like 12-0 with 12 first round finishes. And the competitive level of the game at that point was not what it is today, right? But I mean, still had 11 finishes. I wasn't even shaving yet. I was like, I was 18 years old, and yeah, so that's where it came from.
Very interesting. Okay. Now, do you remember your first fight?
I do.
What was that like?
Yeah, my first MMA fight was in Juarez, Mexico, and I think it was a big card. Like there's a lot. I think there's 20 fights on the card. Bunch of dudes, guys from all over the place. It was actually a fairly well organized card for that time period. So and I fought a guy from I think maybe Oklahoma, who was a wrestler, and I think I may have broke my foot right out of the gate. Like I threw an inside kick and he checked it, and I mean I never went and got an X-ray, but my foot hurt like hell for a couple weeks after that. He took me down, and I ended up taking his back, and I got a pretty quick choke.
Wow, that's awesome. With a broken foot, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I realized it was broken until afterwards.
Oh wow! But I mean, now in the fight, do you immediately realize something's broken like that, something's off, or is adrenaline just kind of going and you just don't even notice it?
I think so. When I broke stuff, it's kind of like a warning light comes on, but I don't know. Typically, I mean, I don't let that pull me out of what I'm doing.
Yeah, you don't lose the focus. You're like, oh, something's weird. Whatever, I got to dodge these punches.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. Makes sense. Now, how do you think your style kind of evolved through the years? Because I mean, you've grown through the years, definitely, but
Sure.
like.
Well, I think so. When I was young, like a teenager, there's no other kids, no other like teenagers who were training. And so all the people that I trained with were, mid-20s, like full-grown men, and older than that, like big dudes. And even though I had a wrestling background, it was, I was just pretty much, out-muscled by a lot of these guys. So I learned to get really good at jiu-jitsu. I learned to be, good off my back. I developed a good guard. My striking was always pretty crisp, and I was, real creative. I would say that for a long time, being good off my back served me really well. And then as I got to the higher levels and people got better at defending subs, like big strong wrestler guys, like kind of for instance George St. Pierre, right? I spent a lot of time in that fight on my back, kind of getting away from my wrestling and focusing so much on my jiu-jitsu ended up becoming kind of an Achilles heel. So that was like a way that, I wasn't getting finished by these guys, but I was getting ground out and losing decisions. So, I realized that I was going to have to get back to my roots and really start working my wrestling again. And it shows in some of my fights. It's just, obviously a lot of my fights have been more striking dominant. But for instance, like my fight with Thiago Alves is an example where, I was landing takedowns in addition to the, crazy striking exchanges that we had. The more recently, the fight with Matt Brown, Matt wanted to grapple. He wanted to wrestle. And so I, to win that fight, I was going to have to just make sure that I won that grappling match.